Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really unpacking something practical for landowners.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about navigating the world of hunting leases.
Hmm.
If you own property, maybe you've thought about leasing it for hunting, or, even if you just know someone who does, this one's definitely for you.
Yeah, it's a common scenario.
So the main question guiding us today, and this comes straight from our source material, is basically this. If you lease your farm to hunters, should you let them use your tree stands, your blinds, maybe even outbuildings?
It's a really good question. A bit of a dilemma sometimes.
Exactly. So our mission here is to give you the insights to, well, manage expectations, understand the safeguards you really need, and hopefully build a really successful hunting lease relationship, one that works for everyone.
And we're drawing on an expert blog post today. It does a good job, I think, of looking at how to manage these lease relationships.
Yeah.
What I found insightful is how it balances what hunters usually expect with the very real worries landowners have. It guides us toward finding some practical common ground.
Right, finding that balance. So to do that, maybe let's first step into the hunter's boots, so to speak. What are they typically expecting when they sign a lease?
Well, the source suggests that most hunters, they aren't really leasing a property thinking they'll get, fully set up stands or blinds already there.
Okay, so no built-in hunting lodge then.
Huh, probably not. No, the general expectation is they'll scout the place themselves. They figure they'll be bringing and setting up their own gear, their blinds, their stands, all that.
So that's the baseline.
That's the baseline, yeah. Now, that doesn't mean a landowner can't offer the use of existing stuff. It's totally the landowner's call.
Right.
But it's something to think about when you're, hashing out the lease details.
Which brings us right over to the landowner's perspective. It seems, completely understandable to be a bit wary about letting hunters use structures already on the property, things like tree stands, blinds, even barns or sheds. The source specifically mentions the modern legal climate as a factor here. Can you unpack that a bit? What does that really mean for a landowner?
Yeah, that's a key phrase.
Yeah.
The modern legal climate basically points to the fact that we live in a time where, well, liability concerns and, frankly, lawsuits are just more common.
Right.
So landowners are smart to be cautious. They could potentially be held responsible if someone gets hurt on their property, even if the landowner wasn't directly involved in the incident itself.
Okay, that makes sense.
So for landowners, it's about balancing that caution, which is totally justified, with what the hunter might expect, especially, if they're paying a premium price for that access. It's absolutely the owner's decision what is and isn't allowed. But finding that middle ground can really help build a better, more lasting relationship.
So finding the middle ground, it's not just about being nice, is it?
Mm-hmm.
The source seems to frame it as pretty crucial. Why is it more than just fairness?
Oh, it's definitely strategic. By thinking ahead and addressing what both sides need, finding an agreement that works for everyone, landowners aren't just being fair. They're creating a more fluid partnership, as the source puts it.
Fluid, okay.
Yeah, and that can seriously cut down on lessee turnover rates. The hassle and cost of finding new hunters every year.
Ah, right, like finding a good long-term tenant versus constant turnover.
Exactly. It's just smoother and honestly probably more enjoyable for everyone when things are clear and agreed upon right from the start.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So the idea of a middle ground sounds great, but how do we actually make it happen? What are the practical tools for building this relationship and making sure everyone's protected?
Well, the source highlights two things that really stand out as paramount.
Okay, what's first?
The first, and it's incredibly effective, is a really well-written lease agreement. Think of this as the blueprint for the relationship.
The backbone.
Yeah, the backbone, exactly. A professionally and carefully written lease contract, as the source says, should address what everyone needs, make sure treatment is fair and equal.
Sets the rules clearly.
Right. Clear rules from day one. And that's vital for limiting those potential liability concerns we talked about. The source even mentions providers like Basecamp Leasing that offer these kinds of agreements.
Got it. So the lease is the foundation, sets the boundaries, but, and this is interesting, the source calls the second element perhaps the most important step.
Yeah.
And that's getting solid liability insurance. Why elevate insurance even above the written contract?
Well, I think it comes down to that ultimate safety net. It's about peace of mind,
Hmm.
especially in today's world, that modern legal climate.
Right.
Look, hunting is actually, statistically speaking, significantly safer than most believe it to be. The numbers bear that out.
Okay.
But, stuff happens sometimes. And for those rare times when something does go wrong, a strong insurance policy is absolutely essential. It protects both the lessor, the landowner, and the lessee, the hunter.
And the source mentioned the American Hunting Lease Association, AHLA.
Yes, the AHLA.
Hmm.
They offer policies with specific benefits tailored for this exact situation. Things like potentially next day coverage, which is fast,
Wow, yeah.
a zero deductible in many cases. They might even provide a custom-created attorney-approved waiver. Plus, resources like a landowner guide for making your property safer and even no trespassing signs. Little practical things, too.
And I think you mentioned they email the insurance certificate straight to the landowner. That sounds super useful. Quick proof.
It is really practical. And these policies, they typically offer pretty substantial coverage amounts. You hear terms like per occurrence payouts, it's the max for one single incident,
Okay.
and higher aggregates, which is the total max the policy will pay out over its term. The really crucial part here is who it covers claims from.
Right. It's not just the hunter.
No, not at all. It protects you from claims by invitees, people you invited onto the property for your benefit. Also, licensees, like the hunters, who are there for their own recreation. And maybe surprisingly, even claims potentially arising from trespassers, people there without permission.
Wow. Even trespassers. That's broad coverage.
It really is. It aims to cover the landowner from various angles. And there's also something called vacant land insurance that provides general liability for owners of, well, vacant land. It covers claims for injury or property damage if it's due to the landowner's negligence. Doesn't matter if the person was invited or not.
So another layer of protection.
Exactly. It's all about protecting your assets and giving you that essential peace of mind.
Okay, so we've covered the sort of the legal framework, the lease, the insurance, really important stuff. Let's switch gears a little bit now. One of the core questions was about letting hunters use things like tree stands. So maybe you can explain why these bits of gear are so important to hunters. Understanding their value might help landowners make decisions, even if they decide not to provide them.
That's a great point. Knowing why these things matter helps frame the whole discussion. Let's start with tree stands. The big advantage is, well, obvious, the elevated vantage point.
Right, getting up high.
Yeah, it dramatically increases the hunter's field of view. They can spot game much farther away, but there's more to it.
Oh.
Being elevated also helps disperse human scent above an animal's nose, makes it harder for game like deer to smell you.
Ah, clever. Didn't think of that angle.
And, just being up in a tree naturally puts the hunter above the typical sightlines of animals on the ground. It's natural camouflage in a way.
Okay, so elevation offers multiple benefits. What about ground blinds then? Totally different approach.
Totally different. Ground blinds offer excellent concealment because they're designed to blend right into the surroundings. Makes them really versatile for different types of terrain where maybe trees aren't suitable for stands.
And probably more comfortable.
Definitely. They provide a comfortable and enclosed space, which is great protection from wind, rain, cold, you name it. They're also usually highly portable and easy to set up.
So good for shorter hunts or scouting.
Exactly. Ideal for that. And here's another key point, especially for landowners to consider. Ground blinds are particularly good when hunting with, say, children or individuals with mobility limitations. Much more accessible and secure than climbing a tree.
That's a really important point about accessibility. Okay, and then there's the third type you mentioned, tower blinds. Sounds like a mix of the other two.
That's a good way to put it. They combine the elevation advantages of a tree stand with the enclosed comfort and concealment of a ground blind.
Best of both worlds, maybe.
In many ways, yes. Their height gives that expansive view for spotting game early. They often have sturdy construction, making them feel more stable and secure than a portable tree stand might.
Right, more permanent feeling.
And that enclosed design offers superior protection from the elements. Really good for long hunts, sitting out in bad weather. Plus, many are quite spacious, so you can fit multiple hunters or bring extra gear comfortably.
So if I'm a landowner listening to this, knowing how beneficial a tower blind can be, how might that influence my lease? Could offering one be a selling point, maybe justify a higher price?
Absolutely, it could. Understanding these benefits isn't just academic. For a landowner, knowing why a hunter really values, say, a well-placed permanent tower blind could help you position your lease offer. It could give you a competitive edge, maybe attract a more committed long-term hunter, or, yes, potentially justify asking for a higher lease payment. It's about understanding the value you might be offering, or the value the hunter wants to bring themselves.
That makes sense. Understanding the why behind the gear helps everyone. Now, just a crucial reminder before we wrap things up here.
Yes, definitely.
Everything we've discussed today, it's purely for informational purposes. This is absolutely not legal advice.
Critically important, yeah.
If you need legal advice about your specific situation, your property, your potential lease, please consult a qualified attorney. They're the ones who can properly advise you.
Couldn't agree more. Get professional legal counsel.
So, as we bring this deep dive to a close, it really seems clear that a successful hunting lease isn't just, a casual agreement. It's more like a strategic partnership that really requires some planning.
Foresight.
Yeah, foresight. Understanding what each side expects, getting it down in writing with clear agreements, and then critically backing it all up with solid protection like insurance. That seems to be the path to, well, peace of mind and potentially a successful venture.
Precisely. It's holistic. You need to grasp the practical side, like why certain gear is advantageous for hunters, and combine that with the essential protective measures, the written lease, the right insurance. When landowners do that, they can really create a situation that benefits everyone involved. It builds that foundation of trust and security.
And that perspective leads us nicely into our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over.
Okay.
Given how vital clear agreements and specific insurance policies seem to be for protecting assets, even in something like a hunting lease, which might seem straightforward on the surface, what other areas of our lives, maybe relationships or arrangements we think of as low risk, might actually benefit from a closer look, a deeper dive into the underlying agreements and protections we have or maybe don't have in place?
That's a really interesting question to ponder.
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.